Morning, all. All right, today I want to talk about rookies. Yep, I want to talk about rookies in the National Hockey League. Not every team in the league has rookies of note on their roster, and I'm just going to talk about skaters, not goaltenders. Goaltenders will get their own video. I'm going to talk about the West first. I'll talk about the East second, and then I'll do a video on goaltenders. All right, so starting things off with the Anaheim Ducks. Wanting to talk about these players. We'll start off with Mintyukov. Mintyukov, 33 games, 2 goals, 16 assists, 18 points. Honestly, Mintyukov has all the markings of a star defenseman in the National Hockey League. I think he's going to have fantastic levels of production, and his overall numbers, I think, will just improve as time goes by. I don't think he's going to get a lot of consideration when it comes to Calder, because there's a guy from Chicago we're going to talk about at some point soon here. But, yeah, Mintyukov is one to keep an eye on if you have, like, one of those keeper fantasy leagues. And also, of course, Leo Carlsson, who was a surprising draft pick when they picked him up. Not as much of a surprise those people make it out to be. But, yeah, in 28 games this year, 8 goals, 7 assists, 15 points. His production in terms of goals and points per game, it feels like, has fallen off a little bit. But you know what? There's a star there as well. So for the Anaheim Ducks, the future is really, really bright. There are some good young defensemen and forwards in their prospect pool. I really think the Anaheim Ducks are going to be a team to watch. I would say as soon as maybe next season they'll be able to sustain what we saw from them through the first 15 games this season. From Arizona, so before the season started, there was a lot of hype around Cooley. He had that one preseason goal, which was absolutely fantastic, and it was. In 33 games, he has 3 goals, 14 assists, 17 points. The thing to focus on here with Cooley is he's scoring about a point every other game. The goals totals aren't exactly where you might want them to be, but with rookies, that's not that unusual. I've done videos before on Hall of Famers who had kind of underwhelming rookie seasons from a points and goals perspective. I do think the talent's there with Cooley. I think this kid's going to be fantastic. And also the fact that the Arizona Coyotes are in a playoff spot and fighting for a playoff spot, I think will only help him and help the Coyotes in general. It's got to be nice to play games that mean something. Also, Kesselring. Kesselring's been impressive lately. He's played 17 games, 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 points for Kesselring. Again, we're not going to hear about him when it comes to Calder votes or anything. But I honestly, I think with Kesselring, Arizona's shown they got themselves a keeper from the Oilers there, and he's a defenseman, and it is one of those things where at the time we I looked at least and said, well, I mean, Kesselring probably not going to be a really solid, not top 4 defenseman, probably bottom pair. I don't know, in Arizona, and I've talked about this before, Arizona does a really good job with turning players around or helping them to develop, and Kesselring's another example of that. He looks fantastic. For Calgary, so with Calgary, the 2 that I picked, because there are more than 2, there's not really much there with Coronado, so I don't have Coronado on the board. I don't feel like I need to say a lot about Zary, because I talk a lot about Zary, but in 24 games, 7 goals, 10 assists, 17 points. Fantastic production from Zary. I think above what was expected of him as well. So, yeah, I think Zary's been a really solid player so far for the Calgary Flames. And the other Flames rookie to discuss today, Pospisil. Pospisil's been quite the story there too. Not as many goals and points. 22 games, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points. But good energy players. So Pospisil probably not going to be a star player in the National Hockey League, but he's a hard worker. And I think the fact that he's playing on the same team as Blake Coleman, if he takes notes from Blake Coleman, he could have a nice long career for himself. So, yeah, those are the 2 I picked for Calgary, and I tried to limit it to 2. There are a couple of teams on the list where it ends up being 3. Not on this video, but on the eastern side of things. Yeah, there are 2 teams on the east that I wanted to talk about, 3 different rookies. Chicago, got 2 for Chicago as well, and they're the ones you would think they are too. So Connor Bedard, the discussion has been about whether or not he's producing the way people thought he would. So before the season started, I had him pegged for around a point per game. And I felt like, yeah, 82, 86 points, somewhere in that range. Now, he's got 30 points in 33 games. He has 13 goals, including the beautiful Michigan goal he scored the other night. Bedard's already a star in the National Hockey League. I mean, and I've seen people saying, well, defensively, okay, but he's a rookie. And really for rookie forwards, it's not really all that surprising to see struggles defensively. And I've already gone over the advanced stats. Bedard, from an advanced stats perspective, he's pretty good. So I do think Bedard's a keeper, and obviously most people watching this would agree. The other rookie to talk about, Korchinski. Korchinski, solid on the blue line. He's coming off of a recent injury, of course. 27 games, 2 goals, 5 assists, 7 points. He's going to be quite the defenseman in the NHL too. I've talked about how I really believe we're in kind of a golden age for defensemen. It feels like every team has one defenseman at least that you can make an argument either is in that Norris competition right now or could win a Norris Trophy over the next few years. I think almost every team has at least one defenseman you can make that argument with. Korchinski, I think, will develop into that for the Chicago Blackhawks. Colorado, there's no blue chippers here, but I wanted to give props to Malinsky. He's looked good since being inserted into the lineup. 12 games, 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points. And this is where injuries can be good. Like, injuries aren't fun. I don't think they're fun for the team. I don't think they're fun for the player, obviously. But Malinsky's been quite good for Colorado in the games he's played. And again, it's just the 12 games. And then the other rookie I wanted to talk about is Riley Tufte. 5 games played, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. Tufte, of course, coming out of Dallas. There's a lot of Dallas-Colorado crossing right now when you look at the number of Avs that are former stars. And for Tufte, I really hope he succeeds. He had a really strong preseason. He's been up and down. He's cleared waivers, I think, twice so far this year. And so for Tufte, I really hope he gets an opportunity with the Avs and grows into that. Like, he's never going to be a top 6 forward, but if he can be a really good fourth liner, whether that's in the middle or on the wing, hey, good for him. Dallas is easy. There's none. There are no players on their roster that, according to the NHL stats page, are rookies. None of them are actual technical rookies, and this is where it's odd. There are a couple of teams that don't have rookies, Dallas being one of them. In terms of the West, I don't think there's another one. Yeah, there isn't another one in the West. In the East, I think it's just the one in the East, too. Yeah, there's one in the East. There's 2 teams in the NHL. Spoiler alert, it's Carolina. That there's nobody who's a rookie who's played up front. Yes, there's a goaltender, and there's a goalie video that will come as well. For Edmonton, just the one I wanted to talk about here. There are other rookies that have played for them this year, but I wanted to talk about Hamblin. 21 games, 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points. Hardworking forward. Hamblin's a good, hard-working forward, and if he can add just a little bit of offense there, the Oilers have themselves a gem. But even still, with that work ethic, he will have a job in the National Hockey League, and I think the Oilers are probably pretty darn happy with the job that Hamblin's done thus far. With the LA Kings, because again, there's just the one Oiler, I went with, I'm going to spell that wrong, aren't I? Nope, I'm going to catch myself. Like, there isn't 2 F's, it's 1 F. That's right, it's 1 F. We'll get the 2 in there. Because we're talking about Hamblin, and with Laferriere, it's a similar storyline. And what's interesting is I've noticed that with broadcasts, and again, this is broadcasts against LA, people are won over to Laferriere pretty quickly. His speed, his work ethic, his tenacity out there, his compete level. And so, yeah, people are fans of Laferriere's game, and I'm one of people. So, yeah, I like Laferriere's game too. I think he's an excellent player for them, and he's been playing really well. All right, now also from the Kings, and there's a reason I'm putting Mo Verare in there, because I've always heard it pronounced Mo Verare by LA announcers, but I've heard Mo Verare. Like, I've heard various, and I'm pretty sure Mo Verare is the right way of saying it, but he's played 5 games. In those 5 games, I've been impressed with some of his games to the point where I think eventually announcers are going to have to know, everybody's going to have to agree on how to pronounce his name, because I think he's good. I'm not saying great, but I think he's good. Minnesota, you know, it feels like Rossi's been around forever, so it's easy to forget that Rossi's a rookie. But I will say this, 32 games, 11 goals, 10 assists, 21 points. He's not going to threaten Bedard when it comes to the Calder, because I don't think he's the best rookie on his team, but Rossi's pretty darn good. And so, yeah. When Rossi ends up getting an extension from the Minnesota Wild, don't be surprised when it looks the same as Boldy's contract. I think Rossi's the real deal. I think that while Minnesota, obviously, there's all the other issues we've talked about with them this year, and they've had, they fired their coach and everything. Rossi's been really consistently good for them. And one that's been talked about, and part of what inspired this video, is the Brock Faber discussion. So the idea that, he should be more in the conversation for the Calder. And I'm going to say this, 2 goals, 14 assists, 16 points in 32 games, and he is playing a lot of minutes. Faber's a fantastic defenseman. I do expect him to be a finalist for Rookie of the Year. I don't expect him to threaten Bedard. You'd have to do something remarkable to be able to threaten. And I'm not saying he's not playing very, very well and that you can't make the argument for remarkable, but I'm talking like something where nobody in the media who's got a vote could say, man, I have to go with Bedard, where they'd say that's undeniable proof that Faber should be Rookie of the Year. And so it's possible we see that before the end of the year, but I think really for Minnesota fans, they should be quite excited that Faber looks like the real deal on the blue line, and Rossi's been excellent up front. You've still got Boldy there. Boldy's a young player. There's a good young core there with Minnesota to keep an eye on. Nashville. Another one that doesn't feel like he should be a rookie, and that's Evangelista. 33 games, 4 goals, 12 assists, 16 points. Evangelista's been impressive, and I think probably from an offensive perspective, there's probably a desire for a little bit more from him, probably maybe a goal or 2 more, shoot a little more often kind of thing, which again for a rookie is not a big deal. But yeah, Evangelista looks like he's going to be a good top 6 forward for the Nashville Predators for as long as he wants to be there. Del Gaizo I want to talk about a little bit. Now, he just got into a handful of games. And I'm going to say this, based on his career numbers, the 3 assists in 5 games, Del Gaizo doesn't project to be an offensive defenseman in the National Hockey League. We'll see what ends up happening. We've seen the inverse, where somebody who's offensively minded all the way until the NHL becomes a defensive forward or defensive defenseman in the NHL. Maybe it goes the other way. Maybe Del Gaizo does really well from an offensive perspective in the NHL, comparatively speaking, with what he's done in the lower leagues. But I did like him in the 5 games he's played, just the 3 assists so far. Hopefully we get a chance to see him again in Nashville before the season's done. For San Jose, so there was a lot of dunking that went on about how San Jose got fleeced in the deal for Timo Meier. Now, I'm not saying that it was an even trade, but Hochek's been good for San Jose. He has 6 assists in 24 games. And I think he's going to play the rest of the year with the big team, and it can only be a good thing for him. There's always the concern about playing through a bunch of losing. Do they get a culture of losing? Do they get comfortable with losing? I don't really know if that's a thing necessarily. I know it's always a concern for people. I don't know how realistic it is that's going to take place. But Hochek is, I think, solid enough that he should be a top 4 defenseman for the Sharks from here going forward, unless something dramatic happens and they add defensemen at the deadline. But, yep, should be top 4. Which brings us to another defenseman who they added on waivers. Emberson, still a rookie. Still qualifies as a rookie in the NHL. 16 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. One thing I will say for Mike Grier, he has done a decent job of backfilling on that blue line and trying to fix where the blue line maybe doesn't necessarily work all that well. Because before the season started, most of us looked at that blue line and said, this is not a good blue line. This is a blue line that's going to really struggle. Well, like I said, Hochek's been good, and they picked up Emberson on waivers, and he's been solid. They've picked up Addison as well. That blue line's changed, and I think it's not a great defense, but it's better than what it looked like it was going to be before the season started. Seattle. Talked about energy forwards. Ty Karche, absolutely an energy forward. 34 games, 6 goals, 5 assists, 11 points. I'm not sure on what the offensive upside for Karche is. I do think that he definitely has that 20-goal a season potential, but he's a good energy player. He's a hard worker, and so, yeah, if you're a hard worker, you've got good energy and good foot speed, you're probably going to be pretty good in the National Hockey League. And Karche, I think, has been solid for them in a season that hasn't been great for Seattle thus far. And also, I want to talk about Riker Evans a little bit. Riker Evans, 8 games and just 4 assists so far. But you know what? I think Evans, definitely an NHL defenseman. I remember when he got drafted, there were some in the chat on the channel I noticed saying, I can't believe they took Evans. They could have got him later. They're going to regret Evans. I don't think they regret Evans right now. I think he was a solid pick. Ron Francis has done a good job. Both the expansion draft, I think he did pretty well, and so far at the amateur draft, he's done well too. So we'll see, how many games Evans gets into from here once guys get healthy. But I think he might have earned himself a spot in the lineup. St. Louis, just wanted to talk about with St. Louis, and I mean we've talked about Perunovich on this channel before. He has 18 games played and 3 assists. And I guess the one question with Perunovich is, so is he now going to be is he going to be a regular for the St. Louis Blues going forward? Is Perunovich going to evolve into he's, legit top 6? You can't even think about taking him out. What is Perunovich's ceiling at this point? Is there still that top 4 upside? The 3 assists in 18 games tells you there's not a lot of data there at this point in time to tell us what he's going to be able to do. But yeah, I mean, he's looked good at the AHL level, but that's always the trick. They can look good at the AHL level. Can they succeed at the NHL level? Kind of similar to Riker Evans, hoping he does succeed at the NHL level. Vancouver. So Vancouver, there's not a lot here, but I feel like, I want to talk about a couple of the guys who have appeared. Hirose. Akita Hirose, good depth defenseman, just played 3 games at the NHL level. I think the talent's there for him, and so it'll be interesting to see how he develops for the Vancouver Canucks. And then also, Linus Karlsson. Linus Karlsson's played 3 games with the Canucks. And there's some intrigue there with Linus Karlsson about what he's going to end up being, what his ceiling is. And I don't think we have a full report card, obviously, on them at this point. But at the AHL level, they've both looked good. So that's what I can report. They've both looked good at the AHL level. And so we'll see if either Hirose or Karlsson earn their way into the lineup a little more often as the season goes along. For Vegas, I had expected more out of Dorofeyev than what we've seen so far. But he's young, and they're not rushing him. So 16 games, 3 goals, 4 assists, 7 points. Absolutely respectable totals for a rookie. Not all rookies come in and do what Bedard's doing, obviously. So Dorofeyev is developing well, and yeah, he's been a solid player for them. I was more impressed with him last year than this year, but it feels like maybe he's not getting the amount of ice time that he got last year. At any rate, Dorofeyev's on the board, as well as Korczak. Now, if you've been watching Vegas games, you know Korczak's quite good. And again, when you're dealing with a rookie class, and it feels like this year's rookie class is pretty deep and it's pretty talented. There's a lot of good rookies, and Korczak's kind of lost in the shuffle a bit. 1 goal, 6 assists, 7 points in 15 games, and I think he's going to be a really good top 4 defenseman for the Vegas Golden Knights for some time to come, and showing that, I mean, they've traded away some of their top draft picks in their 6-year existence. But they've held on to some pretty good ones too, and they've shown they can hit outside of the first round. Which brings us to Winnipeg. There's just one that's appeared in games for Winnipeg, and that's Chisholm. Chisholm, just the 2 games, 1 assist. I don't have a lot to say when it comes to Chisholm. I remember him being out there. I remember writing his name on the board for the assist, because, if I see their name on the board, I'm like, oh, I've written that name on the board, which means probably got a point. But yeah, Chisholm, 1 assist in 2 games. Winnipeg, not a lot of rookies, but there are a lot of young players in Winnipeg that are performing quite well. So, which rookie has impressed you in the Western Conference so far this season? Which rookies would you like to see get called up that aren't on the board and get into some games for these teams? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.